Origins of Mr. Hyde. Inspired by the famous novel, Szabo concocted a similar formula. Repeated use of this formula destroyed his sanity and turned him into a savage schizophrenic creature. Szabo first appeared in Journey into Mystery No. 99, December, 1963. According to said story, he had acquired a reputation for not being able to hold a steady job for several years, apparently due to coming into conflict with his employers. At the same time, he was fascinated with the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, secretly contacting experiments on unlocking the powers of human potential through chemistry. His test subject was himself. According to Secret War No. 2, July, 2004, during his experimentation, Szabo became a customer of prostitute Jennifer Johnson. She got pregnant and gave birth to their daughter Daisy Johnson, later known as Quake. His already mutated genome resulted in his daughter developing powers of her own. Said daughter grew up in foster care. Szabo sought employment with famous physician Dr. Donald Blake. He planned on first gaining Blake's trust and then robbing him. However, Blake had already heard of him and had nurse Jane Foster throw Szabo out of his office. Several months later, Szabo completed his serum and transformed into Mr. Hyde. Noting that even his fingerprints appeared different in this form, Szabo decided to perform crimes in Hyde's form and avoid all criminal activity in Szabo form, allowing him to use the Szabo identity to escape anyone pursuing him. He chose Blake as his first target, mainly for revenge. Hyde smashed his way into Blake's office, threw the man out of a window and ripped open Blake's safe. He escaped with its contents. He later listened to the radio and was furious to learn that Blake had survived his attack, claiming to be saved by Thor. Selecting Thor as a new target for revenge, Hyde took to performing bank robberies while disguised as Thor. Thor's reputation suffered as New York City believed the Asgardian to be a supervillain. Hyde stalked Blake and Foster during one of their dates. He abducted the both of them. He left Blake tied up next to a time bomb, set to explode in 24 hours, and took Foster with him as a hostage/prospective love interest. He hijacked a military submarine and planned to turn to piracy, with Foster as his queen. He was however attacked by Thor. Their skills at unarmed combat were about equal as depicted, but Thor gained an advantage by creating a small tornado with his powers. Hyde had to escape the fight, leaving Foster behind. Szabo was conducting experiments in his Manhattan apartment when Cobra entered it as a burglar. Szabo transformed into Hyde and rushed to face the intruder. He proved invulnerable to both physical attacks and nerve gas thrown against him by Cobra. However, the two villains soon realized they were both enemies of Thor and entered an alliance against him. They used Szabo's equipment to trace him to Donald Blake's office, but failed to deduce Thor and Blake were the same person. They captured Blake easily, but Foster distracted them for a few seconds, enough time for Blake to transform to Thor. The battle raged for quite a while, but the villains used a hydraulic hoist machine to steal Thor's hammer from him. In No. 106, July, 1964, the villains were disappointed to see Thor flee, leaving them with his hammer. Soon Blake approached them, offering to help them locate Thor, in exchange for his walking stick that had somehow ended up where the hammer should be. They offered Blake the cane and he left, only to see Thor returning moments later. This time Thor outclassed Hyde in battle. Hyde returned to his normal form and escaped, leaving Cobra behind. He stalked Thor for a while and attempted a surprise attack. He managed to separate him from the hammer again, but Thor punched him through a wall. Thor kept beating Hyde for a full minute, knocking his opponent out seconds, before reverting into Donald Blake. Hyde was imprisoned in the vault, in a cell next to that of Titania. When Iron Man attacked the vault, intending to disable Stark technology used without permission, Hyde was among the prisoners listening on the sounds of conflict and trying to figure a way to use it to their benefit. In Captain America Volume 1 No. 340, April, 1988, Iron Man's attack resulted in a blackout throughout the vault. The technology used in the cells was disabled and various prisoners were able to leave them, including Mr. Hyde and Titania. Hyde knocked out a group of guards while Titania retrieved the keys to the elevator. They used the elevator to escape, failing to stop the armadillo from joining them. Hyde and Titania next hijacked a prison truck and escaped to the open road. However, the duo soon found the Captain/Steve Rogers, Nomad/Jack Monroe, and D-Man trailing them on motorcycles. The chase ended when Hyde lost control of the truck and both villains were forced to abandon the vehicle. Hyde correctly suspected the captain being Captain America using a new alias. He attacked him, but Rogers dealt him a rapid series of blows to the jaw, forehead, knee, and ribs. Hyde was pushed back to the edge of a cliff and almost fell. The captain took the time to remind Hyde of his crimes and the temptation to have him fall to his doom, before helping Hyde up. Hyde was winded and chose to surrender. Nomad and D-Man had managed to subdue Titania. Vagabond had managed to convince Armadillo to voluntarily return to prison and finish his sentence. Vagabond drove all three villains back to the vault. Hyde was combating She-Hulk when Ant-Man introduced himself as the Slaying Mantis and joined the battle on She-Hulk's side. However, Hyde only used the distraction to knock both heroes back. She-Hulk recovered and renewed her efforts against Hyde while Ant-Man retreated in haste. Hyde worked with Cobra, Firebrand and Mauler in an assassination mission. The target was the Taskmaster, at the time employed as a trainer at Camp Hammond, Connecticut. They had to fight members of the Initiative, Annex, Batwing, Boulder, Constrictor, Gorilla Girl, Prodigy, Sunstreak, War Machine and Yellow Jacket. Hyde was set on fire by Sunstreak but still remained coherent enough to try to spread the fire to the gigantic Yellow Jacket. However, the giant tossed Hyde away and the would-be assassins were forced to retreat. Hyde entered an alliance with Boomerang, Tiger Shark and Whirlwind. Their ultimate goal was acquiring the fortune of Norman Osborn for themselves. Norman at the time led the Thunderbolts, whose various operatives were controlled by nanobots. The Allies acquired the corpse of Jester/Jody Putt, who had been injected with the same strain of nanobots. Hyde started studying for ways of influencing the nanobots. They also orchestrated a crisis to draw the attention of the Thunderbolts elsewhere by liberating Biohazard from Project Pegasus. Hyde altered the physiology of the radioactive supervillain to that of a living nuclear bomb. They figured the weakest link of the Thunderbolts to be Venom. Hyde and his allies contacted Venom and temporarily disabled his nanobots. They offered him a method to turn the nanobots on and off if he agreed to help them, also presenting a file of blackmail material on him in case he changed his mind. In exchange, they wanted Norman delivered to them. Venom did deliver Norman that same night. Hyde and his allies tried to interrogate him for access to his secrets and money. Norman did produce a laptop and pretended to comply with their demands, until the laptop exploded and took out Boomerang. They realized Norman and Mac had been working together on this occasion. Hyde punched Osborn, but the latter tossed a bomb into Hyde's mouth. Hyde was left spitting blood. Osborn defeated them all and warned them to never cross him again, or he would first kill everyone they ever loved and proceed to torture all four of them to death. Powers and abilities. Calvin Szabo is a talented biochemist who has constructed variations of a chemical serum which transforms him into Mr. Hyde. His powers have changed through time, based on the latest variation of the serum he ingested. The original variation was the weakest and only gave him the power of 12 men. His strength level evolved to being able to lift 11 tons by the late 1960s, 50 tons by the 1980s and 70 tons in the 1990s and 2000s. Uncertain if he can achieve greater strength. In addition, his body generates less fatigue toxins than those of a normal human. He can perform at peak capacity for up to 24 hours without feeling tired. As Hyde, his body is extremely durable, able of withstanding high-caliber bullets, falls from great heights, exposure to extreme temperatures and pressure, energy blasts and impact forces with little to no injury. When actually injured, his healing factor allows him to recover in an accelerated pace. Unclear if he can regenerate severed limbs or missing organs. Hyde is a ruthless and savage but undisciplined fighter. His unarmed combat style resembles that of a street fighter rather than a martial artist. His intelligence level, while transformed into Hyde, has been inconsistent. He has at times been able to use the scientific brilliance of Szabo. At other times, his blind rage degenerates him into an almost bestial state, preventing him from actually using actual thinking. In his normal form, Szabo is more of an intellectual.